Okay, this is 8th grade math, chapter 1, section 1, the activity that'll go with the very first section. The objective for this lesson is students will explore the angle measures of a triangle to develop an understanding of writing and solving equations. The standard number that we will cover is 8.EE7, A and B. Today's activity, you guys will be working with protractors to practice your skills in terms of measuring angles. We're going to be using triangles today, but you can obviously use a protractor to measure other angles also. First of all, I need to review with you the basic steps of measuring with the protractor. Your first step, and I have one over here I can write on, because if I touch my other protractor, it shifts size, turns, whatnot, is you need to line up the base of your protractor on one of the sides of your angles. In this case, we're going to be using a triangle. And you want to make sure that the curved part of your protractor is resting on the rest of the triangle. So when I say the base, this is the base. Now it's going to vary on protractor. Like this one has a little bit of space here. You can see where it's not the very bottom. But I need to make sure that this crossbar right here, where I have these two lines meet, is actually touching the corner of one of my triangles. Okay, so that's going to be my first step, is to make sure that I get those lined up and then make sure that my base is lined up on that edge. So I'm going to go ahead and start with with angle A. So it's just easier for me up here to line up the crossbars, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually see if I can enlarge this protractor really quick to make it easier for you guys to read it. So I'm going to go ahead and line up my crossbars on the corner, and now I'm going to go ahead and turn it so that my base lines up on the other edge of that triangle. My next step is to go ahead and see where it crosses. Now it's not exactly perfect, but it crosses approximately this spot right here, and I cannot mark on my protractor because it'll move my protractor. So I have two angle measures there. I either have 60 or I have 120. The easiest way to decide whether it's a 60-degree measure or a 120-degree measure is to go ahead and peek at that angle and decide, is that an acute angle or an obtuse angle, or right. I know that that's an acute angle, a cute little angle. It's less than 90 degrees. So since I know that, I'm going to go ahead and look at my 2-degree measures. I either have 60 degrees or 120 degrees, and I know that 60 is an acute angle, and I decided that it was an acute angle on the triangle. So now I'm going to go ahead and work off of the next angle. So I'm going to have to turn my protractor. I might be able to slide it for this one just right over to C. Make sure my crossbars are lined up on my C angle, and I'm not doing them in order just because of then I don't have to move or rearrange my protractor. And make sure that the base is lined up across that bottom line of the triangle, and now I see that it's crossing through this measure right here. So once again, I have a 120 or a 60-degree measure to choose from. So if I shift this up, I can see that this measure is an acute angle. So my acute measurement on there, 60 or 120, well, 60 degrees again. So I just found out that C is 60 degrees. Now, I know some of you probably remember from previous learnings that a triangle has 180 degrees. So some of you might be able to already figure out what B is. If you didn't, the whole point of this investigation is for you to find out that a triangle has 180 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and now move my protractor around. I'm going to have to shift a little bit. It's probably easier for you when you guys are using your protractors versus for myself up here. But I'm going to have to line that up, my crossbars up, and now I'm going to have to turn my protractor. Now, I don't want to turn it like this. And the reason is it does not complete the last part of that number 1 that says, make sure that the curved part of the protractor is on the rest of the triangle. So I'm going to have to keep turning this until my curved part of my protractor is on there, and I have the base lined up. Shift this just a little bit. Okay, so there it looks like it's lined up pretty good. And I can see, once again, that my number, or my edge, my other edge is cutting right through that 60 and 120. So if I take a peek at this angle, that angle B looks to be like it's an acute angle there. So acute, 60 or 120, which one's acute? 60 degrees. So I know that that triangle is 60 degrees. Okay, so I ended up with all of these being 60 degrees. Okay, so if you look at your, in your book on page 3, you have the same figures that I just did, and we just did letter A together. So this was 60 degrees, this was 60 degrees, C was 60 degrees, and then A plus B plus C gave me 180 degrees. So I just found out that that triangle has 180 degrees, okay? So now you're gonna go ahead and do the same process with B, C, and D. And if you need to reference back how to line up your protractor, just rewind this video and practice on your B, C, and D as I do those steps. You'll want to go ahead and pause your video so that you can have time to go ahead and measure those. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give you the answers for B, just so that you can kind of check yourself. For letter B, you should have ended up with a 90-degree angle. For A, for B, it was 45, and for C, it was 45. Now, if you were slightly off, don't worry about that. I know there is some slight room for error in there, and then once again, we should have ended up with 180 degrees. Okay, for C and D, you can see me for those answers if you need them so that you can check yourself. And don't worry if you're slightly off, but it's more or less that you're practicing the skills of lining up and measuring those triangles, or those angles. Okay, the next part of this investigation or activity is working with finding a missing angle of a triangle. And if you noticed, at least on the two that I have on this previous slide, what did we notice about the sum, S-U-M, which means to add, of the measures of the triangles? We ended up with 180 degrees. So that's something that we were trying to understand, is the fact that the sum of the angles of a triangle are always going to equal 180 degrees when they are added together. So if we look at this triangle that we're given, we have a degree measure of 27 degrees, 82 degrees, and then an X. And if we remember back to the activity that we just did, the rule that we used was A plus B plus C gave us the sum of the measures of the triangles, which we found out were 180 degrees. Okay, so how could we go through and actually write an equation with this? Well, we do have three angles there. We have a 27 degree, an 82, and an X. They're just not labeled as A, B, or C. So we can pick any of them to be whichever we want. We're just going to substitute those numbers in, or letter, for A, B, and C. So we'll just say that this was our A, and it doesn't have to be. We'll say this was the B in the equation, and this is the C. Okay, so when I go through and I rewrite this equation, A, well, I had 27 degrees, plus B, we said was going to be the 82 degrees, plus C is going to equal 180. Now, does anybody remember from last year how we will go through and solve for a missing letter? Well, our first step is going to be to go ahead and chunk together these numbers. Okay, so when I add 27 plus 82, it's going to give me 109. So right now I have 109 plus C, and that's my degrees, equals 180. Okay, my next step is to get that C by itself. So right now it's a one-step equation. I want to leave C there, which means I have to get rid of this. Right now it's adding, so I need to subtract 109 to get rid of it. So we're going to cross that out. Whatever I did on one side of the equal sign, there it is, I have to do on the other. Okay, so on this side I have C left over, which is really our X, equals 180 minus 109. Which gives me 71 degrees. So I just found out that X is 71 degrees. And if I want to double check that, I can substitute in 71 where C is here, and I should get the 180. Okay, when we re-add them together, we should get 180 degrees. Okay, so let's try one more of those. And I'm going to leave my rule up there because the rule's not going to change. I'm going to switch this one out. And I believe this is on page 5 of your journal book, and they're the same ones. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So the degree measures I have are 52, 43, and X. Now this isn't the only way. Some of you are going to start to find shortcuts where you just automatically chunk these two together instead of writing them out individually as A and B and C. You're going to learn to kind of put these two together and come up with that answer of, what, 52 plus 43 would give me 95. And you're just going to automatically do that. But for those of you that are just starting out, you're going to want to take, we'll say this is A, this is B, this is C. And it doesn't matter what order you put them in. So my rule is A plus B plus C equals 180. So A, I said, was 52. Plus 43 plus C equals 180. Now, a lot of you will automatically put these two together instead of writing them individually, and that's okay. The more advanced of a student you become, you're going to start to take some of those shortcuts. So if I go ahead and I say 52 plus 43, it should give me that 95. So I have 95 plus my C, well, it's X, if you'd rather substitute X, it doesn't matter, equals 180 degrees. Okay, I'm to a one-step equation. You guys have been doing these since probably 4th grade, 5th grade, so I know you know how to do them. Right now I'm adding. I have to do the opposite. I need to subtract to get rid of that 95 so that I can have C all by itself here. Okay, here's my equal sign. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so minus 95. So 180 minus 95 gives me 85 degrees. I just found out that C or X equals 85 degrees. If I want to check myself, I can substitute it back in right here. And when I add all of these together, they should equal 180. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and finish out page 5. And I've done 2 of them with you. So if you want to check your answers, you can go ahead and see me for those answers.